Blood and Genetics by galaehobbitofxadia on Wattpad. Chapter 5 of Biology and Metal. Colleen clicked her way up the unusually empty hallway, making her way to Iverson's office from the botany labs. On the way, she saw a dark head duck away, and she peered around the corner. "Keith? Is that you?" He scooted out sheepishly, snapping a salute. "Hello, ma'am." "What are you doing, wandering the hallways alone?" Keith flushed red. Well, it's visiting weekend for the cadets, but... "No one to visit?" she guessed softly. Keith's blush got even darker. "Yeah, Shuro's in training." Colleen smiled at him. "Why don't you come with me to the botany labs? Have you ever been inside?" "No." "Well then, come on." Keith followed her cautiously as she typed in the code to let him in, taking him past the experimental plants in their sterile containers and leading him to the greenhouse. His eyes widened and he blinked hard. Colleen laughed. "You've grown up in this area, right? Been around here all your life?" "Yes, ma'am." "But you've never seen this much green in one spot," she said proudly. "Oh, ma'am." "All right, I've got a meeting with Iverson, so I'll be out. If you see a small gremlin lurking around on a computer, that's my daughter, Katie. She doesn't bite. Much." "Thank you," Keith murmured, still blinking in wonder at all of the plants. Colleen smiled, then tapped back down the hall and out of the labs. Keith stood stock still, breathing in all the scents and colors in. He hadn't been lying before. This much green among other colors, and on Garrison campus? It had been here the whole time, and he hadn't ever known that it was here. There was so much plant, that there was this much plant life anywhere. Oh, sure, they'd studied the Amazon and all those plants, but it hadn't seemed real. And besides, Keith's chances of getting to the Amazon was incredibly unlikely, seeing how overgrown the forest was and how he'd be flying planes that would have trouble getting through the foliage. Keith wandered through the veritable forest, careful not to touch anything. A clicking noise met his ears, and he frowned, moving towards it quietly. He poked his head over a table and saw a short girl in jeans and a green t-shirt, typing away at a computer, a stack of books next to her. He watched for a few minutes until she looked up, her amber eyes meeting his unexpectedly. "Hello." Keith startled backwards, barely managing not to slam into a hanging plant. She laughed. "I don't bite." Keith blinked. What was it that Miss Holt had said? "Are you Katie Holt?" "You met my mom then?" "Figures that she was the one who let you in. The code is 24601, by the way, if you want to get in whenever. Mom only thinks I don't watch her when she types in the key code." "Who are you then?" "Kagane. Keith Kagane." "Oh, the mystery project." Katie tilted her head cautiously. "The one that Mom isn't supposed to talk about?" "Huh?" Katie closed her laptop, peering at Keith, her amber eyes glittering. "Mom comes home late sometimes, tells me that she had to stay because there was a genetic issue she needed to be consulted on. A certain Keith Kagane. Then she clamps up and won't tell me anything else. Tells me that I don't have high enough clearance for her to tell me." "Oh." Katie leaned forward. So what? So what is this incredible secret? Forbidden interest in your genes? What's so important about them? If your mom isn't supposed to talk about it, then I'm probably not supposed to either. Did they ever specifically tell you not to talk about it?" Keith thought back. "Well, no." "Then you can talk about it. Spill." "I don't know you. So? I don't have any friends. I won't tell anyone." When Keith didn't respond, she sighed. "Fine. Cut me out of the secret just like everyone else." "That's okay. I'm used to it. Dad and Matt can't talk about Kerberos. Mom can't talk about your genes. And now, when I finally meet someone who isn't sworn to secrecy, he won't tell me anything either. The Garrison takes all the fun out of people." Keith glanced at the door. I guess I can tell you a little bit." "What is so very important that I'm here on a Saturday?" Colleen questioned, frowning slightly. "With all due respect, Commander, I believe that I am entitled to weekends off." "The knife isn't from Earth, just like Kagane's genes." "Looks like an Earth knife." Iverson felt a bit of a smile creep onto his face. "Well, there aren't too many different ways to make a pointy stick, are there? You're right, though. The shape isn't much different from that of our own knives or daggers. The difference is primarily in the material. The metal that makes up the blade isn't found anywhere on Earth. And then there's this." Iverson pulled the knife from his desk drawer, setting it on the desk. The glowing emblem he'd uncovered the night before shined up at them. Colleen reached for it, then hesitated. "May I?" Iverson gave a short nod, and she gingerly picked up the knife by its hilt, examining the glowing insignia. "What is this?" "I don't know, and neither do any of the scientists. We don't know why it glows, the material that the glowing area is made of, where it could draw any potential energy to glow from, essentially. We know nothing about it. We don't know what the symbol means either. Curious, Colleen muttered. Have you had the language experts in on it? Some. They don't know anything. They've never seen it before. The knife may as well be a dead end. Not entirely, Colleen mused. Like I said, if we gather enough evidence that there is someone out there, delaying the Kerberos mission will do nothing for us. Eventually Sandoz will send it out anyway just to look specifically for those possible aliens instead of collecting ice samples. But the launch is 3 years from now. It'll go by fast. Colleen studied the knife. Sir, I think, well, my daughter has become quite good at coding, computer languages, those kinds of things. If she could take a look at this symbol. She's 10, right? Yes, sir. Iverson grunted. Can't hurt, can it? It's not as if we have so many people here who have been able to tell us what this means. Don't tell her what it's about, any more than she needs to know. And don't take the knife. Just take a picture of the glyph. Right. Colleen snapped a picture of the glyph and looked towards the door. Am I allowed to leave now? Yes. Have a good weekend, officer. Commander. Colleen left the office, her shoes clicking softly on the garrison's tiles as she made her way back to the labs. She typed in her code and went straight to the greenhouse. She heard Katie chattering energetically about. Colleen's heart nearly stopped. Genes, and ribosomes, and aliens. Her mind frantically scanned the meetings with Iverson and Keith, trying to remember if they'd sworn him to secrecy. To her dismay, she realized that they had not. They'd figured that Keith would understand the importance of keeping the secret, but then he was only 13, and to be fair, it was kind of his secret to share. She followed the voice of her daughter to find her with Keith. Keith gave Colleen a please help look, and she cleared her throat. Katie? Katie jumped guiltily. Oh, hi, Mom. Katie, do you know Keith? I'd say so, yes. Colleen crossed her arms, tapping one foot on the ground. Katie, what were you two talking about? Biology and aliens, too. I like Fermi's paradox and the dark force theory. Keith didn't know about either of those, and car. Now. Katie gulped and left, gathering her laptop and books. Colleen raised an eyebrow at Keith. New friend? He at least had the graces to look embarrassed. I guess. She gave him a long look. Be careful with Katie, she said finally. She's only 10, but her IQ would put a renowned scientist to shame. She's got a sharp mind. Yes, ma'am. To Keith's obvious relief, Colleen stopped scrutinizing him and exited the lab, motioning for Keith to follow. How did you like the greenhouse? I liked it, Keith ventured. It was quiet. Colleen waited for more, but he didn't say anything. She grinned. Keith, a man of few words. You're welcome to come at any time. Just ask to be let in, and I'll be happy to leave you with the plants. Thank you. Colleen smiled at him. You stay out of trouble, okay? Yes, ma'am. Colleen's smile faded as she left him in the hallway, striding briskly toward her car. Her daughter had some explaining to do. Keith sighed in relief as Colleen disappeared. He rubbed his head. He didn't know how it had happened. One moment there was a table safely between them, with him giving a brief explanation of his weird eyes, and the next moment he was sitting next to her and she had his email as well as a full account of his genes and the theories surrounding them. He shook his head. Would have been nice if Miss Holt had given him the warning about being careful around Katie before that had happened. He turned the corner, walking towards the dorms. An arm wrapped around his chest and a hand clamped over his mouth, dragging him into a different room before he could even think of yelling for help. Katie sat stock still in the back seat of the car, waiting for her mother to make a comment. She didn't have to wait long. So, you and Keith got along well? Yep. Katie didn't say anything else, bracing herself for her mother's attack. Katie, if I say that something is confidential, that means that the case is closed. It does not mean that you pumped someone else for information. He wasn't restricted, Katie shot back. You could have gotten Keith in serious trouble. Her mother snapped. Did you think about that? Katie felt a little worm of worry rise up in her stomach. Will they punish him? They don't need to know that this happened. I'm certainly not going to tell them, but if this gets out, I won't. I wouldn't spill confidential garrison information. That's not the point. You can't do things like this, Katie. You can't take advantage of people like this. Keith didn't know any better, and you took advantage of him. That's got to stop, Katie. Someone might get hurt. I wouldn't try to hurt him. No, I'm sure you wouldn't. But that doesn't mean that he won't get hurt as a direct consequence of your actions. Imagine if someone overheard your conversation. There are people that want to destroy everything different. Imagine if someone like that had heard about Keith's condition. He could get hurt, or even just someone who knew, or even just someone who would use the information for their own gain. It might not hurt Keith directly, but he could be court-martialed for sharing military secrets like that. Katie shrunk back in her seat. I just wanted to know, she said quietly. You can't know everything. There are some things that are confidential for a reason. You shouldn't always go poking. Katie scowled out the window. Fine. I guess I'll just be a good little factory worker then, shall I? Her mother glanced into the rearview mirror, and her angry gaze softened. I'm not saying to never question. Sometimes things should be searched. Sometimes you should pry and find the truth. Sometimes you have an obligation to poke and pry, but this was not one of those times. Understand? I understand. Her mother smiled. Good. I have a puzzle for you. I'm going to send you a picture of a glyph. I want you to see if you recognize it. Katie's phone pinged, and she pulled up the picture. What is this? It's a symbol that was on a knife that we believe belonged to Keith's mother. Do you know what this is, or at least what language it is? Katie shook her head thoughtfully. No, but give me some time and I might be able to find it. Find it where? On the internet. Her mother gave a tut of disapproval. With what? Searches, or someone else? Katie rolled her eyes. You've already searched the entire internet thoroughly for any accounts on anything that I might possibly have without telling you. Why are you still so suspicious? Colleen made a noise. Katie, you better not be internet stalking anyone. Glad to see you're concerned about my safety and how a cyber predator might be watching me and stalking me. Her mother snorted. You're too smart for a cyber predator to be stalking you. You wouldn't let that happen. I'm more worried for the other people on the internet with you. Thanks, I'll keep that in mind next Mother's Day. Once they got home, Katie booted up her computer and went to her email, her secret one that her mother didn't know about. Hey Keith, it's Katie. She waited a couple of more moments, trying to remember all the points of her conversation with Keith. He mostly talked about his jeans, but there was also a bit about his knife, a knife that the garrison had taken away. She sent him a picture of the glyph. Any idea what this means? Yes, it's your knife. I hacked my mom's phone and found it. Katie cracked her knuckles and leaned back, waiting for a reply. She had a distinct feeling that Keith wouldn't tell any adult about that symbol. Luckily, she wasn't an adult.